I call to order the annual Mount Hood Community College budget hearing. I am Matt Donahue, Chair of the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, and I welcome you all to this hearing. The TSCC is a community oversight commission established by the Oregon legislature over 100 years ago. The commission oversees the budgets of all TSCC member taxing districts, of which the college is one, and annually conducts a thorough budget review and certification process. Additionally, the TSCC holds public budget hearings such as this one to engage with district leadership and provide additional opportunity for public comment before budget adoption. I will now ask my fellow commissioners and staff to introduce themselves and state if they have any business relationships with the district that could be perceived as a conflict of interest. And I will start down with you, Todd.
Good evening. My name is Todd Burton. This is my third year on the TSCC. I have no business relationship with Mount Hood Community College. Glad to be here this evening.
Good evening, Eric Gavarston. Pleased to be here. I have no conflicts with the college or no business interest. My first year on TSCC, and I come from working in local government, including 16 years as a city manager here in Gresham. It's nice to be in this room for something other than the 7 a.m. Chamber of Commerce meeting. So,
my name is Rita Moore. This is my second year on TSCC. I'm a former policy analyst, former member of the Portland School Board, and I have no conflicts.
Thank you again. Matt Donahue. My day job is as a municipal bond investment banker or municipal advisor. My fifth year on the TSCC, now serving as chair. I don't have any business relationships with the college. Staff, introduce yourself.
I'm Allegra Wilhite, Executive Director with the TSCC.
And I'm Brittany Abiari, the Budget Analyst with TSCC.
Great, thank you. Would the district representatives introduce yourselves, please?
I think I would remember. Good evening, Chair Donahue and members of the Commission. Thank you for being here tonight to do this important activity of looking at our budget, weighing in on it, and hopefully approving what we presented. We know that this year has probably been a little exciting for you. Probably a lot of activity as you're hearing the challenges that other entities are facing with budgets and trying to continue doing the good work that we all do. So we thank you for you taking your time and doing this important task, and we're happy to be here tonight and present our budget to you or take any questions you have. And I'm joined tonight by members of my team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Bomer. I'm the Vice President of Advancement and Community Engagement.
Jennifer Dement, I'm the Vice President of Finance and Administration. We have Tina and Sergey online.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tina Red, and I'm the Vice President of Instruction.
Roxanne, I think you have to turn the volume in the room up again.
Did you not hear me?
Just keep talking, Tina. It'll be fine.
Just
Eventually
keep
we'll
talking.
hear. Almost.
All right.
Yeah.
Got it. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tina Red, and I'm the Vice President of Instruction.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Sergey Shapilov, and I'm Associate Vice President of Institutional Effectiveness.
I'm also joined by members of our Board of Education, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, Andrew Spear, I'm the Board Chair. Will Miller, Board Member Zone 2. Should play it back. Vice Chair. 29 years I've worked.
Diane?
Diane Noriega, Board Member.
Larry Morgan, Board Member.
Thank you so much. We'll just take a moment to acknowledge district receipt of the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for fiscal year 2025-26 adopted budget book. Nice. So I think at first, if there aren't any more introductory remarks from the district, then I will turn it over to Allegra to go over public comment.
Thank you. And we do have one member of the public signed up to give testimony here in person. If there's anyone online who would like to give public testimony, if you could please raise your hand in the chat and we can get that set up. Each person will have 3 minutes. And then we have also received written comment, which I will provide a summary of after we get through the in-person comment. So our first person signed up is Troy Bilta. So Troy, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, and then I will start our 3 minutes. Yes, that would be perfect. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready. Good evening. My name is Troy Bilta. I graduated from Mount Hood Community College with a degree in engineering, architectural engineering. And today my son is a student here in the cybersecurity program. This college is part of my family story, and I have dedicated more than 17 years to serving this as the mapping and sustainability specialist. This position is cut by the proposed budget. You may not know me personally, but you have absolutely seen my work. You've seen it in the ADA compliant parking lots and ramps, in the sidewalks in front of HBE, in the entry into the baseball stadium, in the EV charging stations and LED lighting upgrades across campus, and the directories that help people navigate their way through this campus. I work with facilities, contractors, faculty, staff, and community partners, providing the information, plans, and technology support they need to work safely, efficiently, and cost-effectively. Over nearly 2 decades, I have built this department into what it is today. That is why I'm here tonight, to respectfully ask that you reconsider eliminating the mapping and sustainability position, especially now as the college enters a major phase of bond-funded construction and renovation. This is exactly when the college needs this role most. Beyond the daily work, I've helped bring MHCC recognition on a global scale. I helped lead us to 2 back-to-back world championships in the Eco Challenge, and I created the Mount Hood Community College Community Conservation and Repair Fair, where hundreds of our community members learned how to save energy, reduce waste, and repair items that would otherwise end up in landfills. This effort strengthened our community ties and demonstrated MHCC leadership in sustainability. But this role is not about awards. It is not a line item in the budget. It is a position that actively saves the college money year after year. The energy upgrades I've led continue to reduce utility cost. In-house drafting and design work I provide, architectural, electrical, mechanical, and civil, saves thousands of dollars on every project by reducing our reliance on outside consultants. That work supports everything from room remodels to space planning and to ADA improvements. Eliminating this role means cutting a resource that has already paid for energy upgrades, saved on consultant fees, reduced institutional risks, and improved the safety and accessibility of our campus. I'm deeply proud of the systems I've built, the money I've saved, and the resilience I've helped create. So tonight I ask respectfully and with full conviction that you reconsider eliminating the mapping and sustainability position, not for me, but for the long-term health, safety, and future of Mount Hood Community College. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Did we have anyone who raised their hand online that would like to testify? Okay. So next I will go over the 4 instances of written public comment that we received. These public comment in full are available on our TSCC website under the meeting minutes. And so please review that to get to full extent. But in very short summary, we had 1 public comment from Heather Mitchoff urging the commission to thoroughly review the budget for flawed financial forecasting. 1 from Luke Davis noting a lack of administrative accountability regarding student support statistics presented to the budget committee. 1 from Troy Bilta requesting that the board reconsider eliminating the mapping and sustainability position. And one from Sarah Imone, my apologies if I have that incorrect, urges the commission to carefully review the budget assumptions, data, and projected impacts specifically related to enrollment, retention, revenue forecasts, and the impact of reducing student-facing roles. That is all that we have for public comment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Allegra. So now we'll get into our questions. I don't know that this group needs this reminder, but give you the questions and you prepare a written response. We would appreciate if you keep those short so we can have a nice back and forth conversation. So the first question is mine, and I will say, note that this marks the 60th anniversary of Mount Hood Community College. And, as you mentioned, this is a tough year, maybe not in such a celebratory mood, but I would ask, what about the last 6 decades have informed your plan for the future?
I'll take that one. First of all, I really appreciate the question because we just celebrated our commencement this past weekend, and it was really a great celebration because we graduated our first bachelor's degree in cybersecurity, and it was the first graduating class of that new program, and something we're really proud of. And I think what it speaks to is that an important lesson for us is that our college is not the same as it was 60 years ago. A lot has changed. Technology has changed. Our workforce needs have changed. And, we started out as a primarily a transfer institution, and now we're serving students from early childhood. We actually just had our preschool graduation all the way up through, working adults returning to the college. So I would say one of the most important lessons for us is that our college has to continually evolve to serve our public. And, unfortunately, that sometimes does mean making really hard choices, but we want to be here to continue our through line, which is really removing barriers for students and continuously meeting the needs of our community. And that means creating a sustainable institution that is here in the future.
When we spoke with you last year, you were planning to complete the National Association of College and University Business Officers, NUBO, Pathways to Sustainability Toolkit to address long-term financial and operational stability. Could you share with us a bit more about this? What does the process look like, and what were the results of the work?
So complete is probably a really optimistic term for using the toolkit. They're tools that we use, so it doesn't prescribe like a single solution. The first step in the process is to do a current state survey. So we launched that in the fall to all of our campus stakeholders with using the template, the toolkit questions. To get an idea of how people understand the budget process, how people understand how resources are allocated. And then the second part that we did in the fall was this database assessment, like a heat map. So it looked at things like enrollment, retention, workforce turnover, and there's like metrics that are the same, for any community college. And then it creates a heat map so you can kind of see where areas you're doing really well in, and then what areas you should perhaps spend a little more time investing in. So when we did the survey, key findings, we heard from people that in general, people thought that the college was struggling, but hopeful. So the majority, but there was still a lot of people that also said struggling and demoralized. So thinking about this is how we started our budget process, hearing this feedback. There was a shared understanding of key pressures, right? Like understanding enrollment declines that we had being really dependent on state support, how our operational costs are rising. So strong recognition of the challenge, but gaps in communication, transparency, which I think leadership's largely aligned, but many employees feel really disconnected from decisions and unclear on direction. And as now we've gotten to the end of the year, I think that has become even more apparent that, like, we think that we're doing and we're communicating and we're being transparent, and what we're hearing is that we want more. So one of the other statistics from the survey was that only 59%, right? It's all how you spin a statistic. 59% of the people said that they believed our financial position. So that's a majority, right? But it also says that a lot of people don't. We passed a bond with less than 59%. But that there's a lot of people in our campus community that don't even understand basic, like, what our financial position is. So that made us aware, like, we have a long road to go, and it's not going to be like finished or completed in 1 year. This is going to be a process of shifting the organization. So we went through this year's budget. We had some surprises as we got through a request for a 5% reduction from the state and, late fall, in addition to the 5% reduction we already knew we had to make. So like that became like, right, all of these things that distracted from the process, or made it more, a bigger, I don't want to say a bigger deal than it needed to be, but like that were just a lot of elements that were moving around, and understanding that we had a lot of work to do with our campus community to understand, like, a culture of reallocation. We really tried to focus on, everything that we do here is related to our mission, right? But what's mission critical, like what has to happen to keep doing our mission, and what's mission supporting, and looking at those mission supporting things and seeing what we can park to the side, because everything that we do here is important, but there's just not enough resources to keep doing everything. So we're trying to move forward in a way, like, this is just a point in time. This is, yes, it's an adopted budget, but we know that there's still a lot more work to do, to be more transparent, understanding what that means for us and what that means for stakeholders, be more inclusive of input earlier in the process. And then more intentional about protecting, again, our core mission and helping people understand what is aligned with our core mission. So we know it's difficult work. We know that it has impacts on individuals. That's the hardest part of, any budget reductions. 83% of our budget is people. It's hard to do anything significant without impacting people. So it's a work in progress.
As you were talking, I was wondering, do you think this was a good year to do it, or was this a particularly difficult year to do this toolkit? Did you find it helpful? Did any of the findings surprise you?
It was, it was a good year to do it. Because we knew we had a gap. We talked last year at our budget hearing, knowing that we were spending more money than we were bringing in, and our reserves were being depleted, and wanting to maintain that, 10% reserves. We needed some tools in the toolbox, and in higher ed especially, I feel like it takes a long time to change culture, to steer, change the direction of the ship. I don't think anybody anticipated that we would get to the end of this year making $5 million in cuts, and that everyone would be happy and holding hands and feel like we were all going the right direction. But I did give us tools. There's more tools that we're looking at, strategies as we move into the next year, because our funding model is structurally flawed. Even if we get more money from the state's only half of our money. There's not an appetite, and it's kind of anti-mission to look at increasing our tuition by the same rate as our current service level, right? So we can ask for a 7% more from the state, but asking for a 7% increase in tuition every year is not sustainable for our students. So that in itself creates the structural deficit, where we either have to bring in more resources or reduce expenses. So this is going to be like an ongoing conversation as we manage the resources and reallocate them to support our mission going forward. And the more tools that we have, the better.
This is a terrible budget year for pretty much everybody. I think especially for education. And a lot of colleges and universities, public colleges and even private colleges and universities, are finding a real budget crunch, and they're having to make very significant cuts. Are you planning to make any cut to curriculum or degree or certificate programs with this budget?
It pauses one of our CTE programs, our machine tool program. So it's not an elimination of the program. It's a pause while we revisit the impact on the industry. And I think there's a question later that our VP of instruction can much better get into the details than me. But so there's one program, but it's not an elimination, it's a pause.
Okay.
One instructional program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think you mentioned answered a lot of the issues that in my question, but really there's two. One is, are you looking at this through a multi-year plan to address the structural gap? Because it's probably going to be occurring next year. Maybe you can comment on that. And I think the more salient question, particularly around the testimony we've heard, is what process did you use to make the decisions, the difficult decisions that you had to make? If you could comment on those two issues, please. Oh, the first question is, this is not just going to go away in one budget year. What strategies are you looking towards for future years?
So the long-term strategy, right, is we need to get our expenditures in line with our revenues. And this budget gets us part of the way, but I mean, I think the difference is this is a structural problem, not a one-time budget crisis. And so it not only requires us to do some actions now, but continue to monitor over, and not just next year, right? This is now part of our ongoing budget process and how we're monitoring. The board has very clearly said, they want a 10% fund balance, which we will maintain. So keeping that intact, we need to figure out how we keep those revenues and expenditures in balance. It's, at the end of the day, we are here for students. So being really thoughtful around how the tactics the things we're doing, both protect as much as we can, support for students, workforce development, and also kind of our ongoing stability. For the process, we do an annual unit planning process every year where each unit talks about or figures out what their plans are for the following year, and that is tied to our budget process. So this kind of launched or started off with each units and managers looking at in their areas where were opportunities for reductions, efficiencies, revenue generation. So it started at the management level, and then those were brought forward to the VPs. Each one was looked at through a lens of equity around how can we maintain as much support for students, and then also how can we, knowing that you need to be able to continue to generate revenue, how could we not negatively impact that revenue generation? The executive team looked at all those proposals, and we agreed upon the final set that was presented in our budget.
And how did you involve the rest of the instructional community and even students during this? I'm sure this was a difficult process, and I know no one feels better in this room that for us just to say most institutions we've met with so far are facing very similar kinds of challenges. But can you maybe comment on that as well?
Well, I think one thing that Jennifer mentioned in the survey, we got some information, but I think the interesting thing over the course of this process where we were starting wasn't always necessarily where the rest of our community was. So we realized we had some budget gaps as far as what we were sharing. When we did the unit planning process, that involves within departments what they saw, right? As far as input, we did through the course as we were talking about the budget, we solicited ideas for revenue generation and efficiencies that could be gained. So we collected some feedback there. I will say though, with students, we didn't do a specific survey for students. And I think that's a lesson we have learned for next year. Is how do we better incorporate that student voice into some of that decision making and having them prioritize what they see and what those trade-offs are that are most important to them.
And I know you mentioned the impact on students for having tuition increases. Is there a tuition increase built into this budget?
Yes, $4.75 per credit.
per credit? What does that roughly percentage? Is that
3.7%.
3%? Okay, thank you.
We know from your strategic plan and from previous conversations that programs like AVID and the Learning Success Center are very important in supporting students. This budget sees cuts to student support programs. What impacts are you anticipating from these cuts, and what work are you doing to mitigate negative impacts to students?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this one. So AVID is, an intense, highly personalized academic and systems navigation support program, primarily geared upward toward college preparation. So I do feel that there will be impact, but we are trying very hard to mitigate those impacts. I think first and foremost, the mitigation involves reassigning the AVID learning specialists. Although the AVID coordinator position was eliminated, the budget for the 11 learning specialists was maintained. And so some of those learning specialists have already been assigned hours in the Learner Success Center, the LSC, which is a part of your question. And I just want to make clear that the Learner Success Center has not been impacted by these budget cuts. In fact, there may be an opportunity with additional staffing as we think about how we're going to relocate the AVID learning specialists. There may be an opportunity for us to expand the service hours and stabilize some of those content areas. So the LSC primarily engages in content tutoring, especially writing and math. And so we are very interested in expanding the hours of that center. The other part of this plan, and we are in impact bargaining, and so some of the halting to my explanation is that I don't know where that's going to land, but there is a plan in place, and I can kind of outline the main points of that. And so one of the ways that we plan to mitigate the closing of the AVID Center is to expand the Hub Student Services Center into our Equity Resource Center. And so those are two spaces, one that was created through a Title III grant that the college has made a considerable investment in. And then more recently, we built the Equity Resource Community Center. And so what we're hoping is that we can expand the academic supports in the Equity and Community Resource Center, which is also where the food pantry is, where our STEP program is, where many of our wraparound services that engage students and support them through housing and food insecurities. So it makes sense to us to co-locate academic supports with these existing services. And so that is one plan for mitigation. We also think that a more centralized location where at the hub, a student might walk in, have questions about how to register, how to find classes, how to find resources for financial aid. We'd like to partner that support with our academic support. So that is one of the mitigation practices that we're going to try and engage in. The other piece of this, once we're settled and can move forward, is that we have some clear communication to students in mind through faculty, through our advising. The hub and the LSC use electronic resources that are easily shared between staff so that they can track what's being said to students, what supports they've already received, what they still need. And so we're really trying to centralize and expand. Other pieces of this that I don't feel we need to mitigate, some of the kind of hallmarks of the AVID program was faculty professional development and also learning communities. And we have one learning community left, and that will be eliminated probably after fall. And that was a department decision. The English department decided that they felt the learning communities weren't supporting the acceleration that they had hoped for students to move from developmental ed into credit-bearing classes. So some of those hallmarks are being eliminated, and we've also bolstered the budget for our teaching and learning center. So some of that faculty professional development will be centralized in the teaching and learning center. And then the final piece in terms of mitigation is that the bridge program that AVID hallmarked and was quite successful will be replaced through year-long activities that will be managed through the Student Services Hub and Student Life. And this is coupled with the Guided Pathways initiative. So the college is a little bit late in launching Guided Pathways, but we have created those this year. And the main concept of Guided Pathways is aimed at creating a coordinated college-wide system of student support. And we think that that will mitigate the elimination of the one AVID position that we eliminated as a result of our budget reductions.
So just to clarify, you have not eliminated the AVID program. You've reduced the FTE.
We've eliminated one FTE in the AVID coordinator position. We've maintained budget for 11 learning specialists that we hope to redeploy in kind of more visible and centralized ways. We have eliminated the AVID program. That was already underway. The AVID program for higher education, which is a separate training and brand from AVID K through 12, had already been eliminated at the national level in 2025. And so we were already in conversation about how to kind of remove that brand and potentially incorporate the learning specialists into the Learner Success Center.
Okay, thank you.
Add one piece to that, not specific just to AVID, but in many of the program reductions that we did, we held back some of the savings and redeployed them in other ways to try to continue supporting the students that were impacted by that program reduction. So we did that like in our transitionals program, in our TRIO program. So many of those weren't like 100% of the savings were swept back. We actually held back some and redeployed them in other areas of the college to support those students.
So obviously in your business related to financial health is the topic of student enrollment and retention. In the past, it's often lower economic opportunity in the job market correlates with higher community college enrollment. We wonder if that is the case now. I think we hear across our districts that, Portland has kind of been in, even if the US has not, has been in a recession for a few years. So we'd like to hear about your kind of interaction with students going through that economic trouble and talk about what your projections are for enrollment and retention, what assumptions are driving those, and do you feel the impact of these cuts are going to hit enrollment and retention?
I'll take this question. So, you're absolutely right that traditionally higher unemployment has always contributed to significant increase in enrollment in community colleges. This time, and when we did models in the past, we traditionally tied it to unemployment rate. Right. However, current labor conditions are kind of, unemployment condition is very different from what we've traditionally seen, right? Because the rate itself is still pretty low. However, we know that especially, students graduating or high school students graduating schools have really, really hard time getting those jobs. So it's kind of, a really unprecedented time. And, the models we've built in the past were based on how the labor market was back at those times. And right now it's a little bit different. If I plug in, in my previous model, the current unemployment rate, we still would probably expect even a slight decline rather than growth, right? However, we know that labor market is not as good as it may appear just by looking at that unemployment rate. So that obviously makes it much harder to, use previous models. With that said, that we do have, another part of your question was related to retention. So our retention has rebounded significantly, and this past year we have seen the best retention in a decade when it comes to fall to winter retention. It reached almost 80%, and this is the highest we have had in a long time. So there are various factors. Another important factor that plays into enrollment is the number of high school graduates, right? And we have heard about, that enrollment cliff. Luckily, it's not a cliff for us yet because we've been looking at the local high school enrollment, and we will observe a decline this year. It is also starting. It will be one of the factors that will contribute, that will push our enrollment down. However, it's not yet at the level that we are not talking about like 5% or 10%, some other districts throughout the country may experience yet. So overall, and even internally right now, we have, like such a contradictory forces. Like I can give you example with our summer enrollment. We are seeing, I mean, the numbers probably will get a little bit lower as we get closer, right? I mean, we're just like a week or so from the summer term. No, yeah, from the summer term starts. So they may adjust a little bit. But as of now, we are roughly 7%. We see 7% increase in enrollment, and which may sound like a very optimistic number. But then when we look deeper, when we look at the new students, we experience a 10%, almost 10% decline in new student enrollment, which is very concerning, right? Because this is the future, what we're going to see in a year, right? In 2 years, if, the number of new students continues to decline. So we obviously see various forces that push in different ways. I mean, there are some of them that are pushing, obviously, for us to expect a decline in enrollment. At the same time, we do have some healthy pipeline that we started like last year due to late rebound from COVID plus improved retention, right? So we have this combination of forces that kind of pushing in different directions. So based on that, I think our estimation was that we are likely to continue to see a growth, but very modest, maybe like, around 1% or so in the coming year, considering this, number of factors. But again, we're in some sort of unprecedented environment where past experience does not fully explain what's happening right now.
Thank you. Don't envy your position trying to project that. I guess somewhat related to sort of student affordability and how that rolls into retention and enrollment. What is the status of the Oregon Promise program and related to your students?
So what we've heard as of this moment that the hack will not that there will not be legislation to eliminate the Oregon Promise program this session, though it may happen in the future sessions. So the HAC plans to work with legislators to modify the program by removing high school college credits from the 90 credit limit for Oregon Promise eligibility, while also maintaining income cap for welfare families. But as far as we know, it's not going to happen, at least in this session. But it does impact quite a few students. I mean, we currently, this year, we've had a little bit over 570 students who received Oregon Promise Grant.
I was just, can I ask a follow-up? Yeah, and this might be more of a question for Jennifer. So what we heard is that declining enrollment of new students, but a higher retention rate, so maybe a slight overall increase. How much does that affects the budget calculation? I mean, how much does that play a big part in really having to make the determination of the structural deficit and the decision making you have to make?
I mean, yeah, we built a 3% enrollment increase into our tuition revenue. So in tuition bearing enrollment, and thankfully that's where enrollment's been strong. The other piece of that equation is our like total enrollment. So not all of our enrollment is tuition. We have the high school enrollment, the college now that happens, apprenticeship programs, non-credit programs. And on those areas, we're declining. So overall, our enrollment's actually declining, which means we get less from the state, right? So we're doing well on the tuition side, our tuition revenue. This is a preview for our board members. We're going to do this later tonight, but our tuition revenue is higher than what we budgeted this year because we've had, strong growth in that area specifically, which is about half of our revenue. But we're behind what we budgeted in state support because the state support gets divvied up based on growth. Last year, the average growth was 6% and we were at under 4%. So we actually lost state support.
And is that state support based on the prior year for the upcoming year?
It's actually based on the 3 prior years. So it's 40% from last year and then 30% from each of the previous 2 years.
Is there any sort of adjustment that can occur midterm or mid-budget year? I don't know how this works, but
in the share of state support that
yeah, I mean, if your enrollment numbers are higher than what you had projected,
there isn't, and probably for good reason when you consider there's 17 colleges all trying to get a piece of the pie, and PCC is 3 times as big as us, right? So if PCC had unexpected growth, they could literally hit every other community college significantly, which would be insignificant to them. So the whole point of like the 3-year weighted average is that there's no surprises. But it also means like if you're growing, it takes you 3 years to see that growth, but you also have to grow as fast as everyone else.
There's no more immediate true up is what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Could you give us an update on the major projects funded by the bond passed last year? And also, I know there was terrific community engagement in that process and kind of your plans to continue to keep the community involved as you work through the bond projects.
Sure. This is a lot. 50 years it took us to pass this bond. I think 7 bond campaigns. I'm so glad, and I had no idea how much work it was going to be. So it's been just over a year now since we passed the bond. We sold the debt. We got $10 million in bond premiums, which was really great. We've had terrific interest rates, so we've invested the money while we do all of our planning. We had some shovel-ready projects that we've went ahead and started or continued. So one of those, like our aquatics enclosure, so the enclosure on our outdoor pool, that's underway. Planning on finishing that up this fall. We've done paving, track resurfacing, lighting, working on some of the Visual Arts Village buildings that had really old rotten siding and roofing. We've done roofing projects. So those type of things we've got underway. We brought a project management owner rep on in December to help us with the projects, which was the best decision we've ever made. And then we have our committees together. So we have a bond oversight committee, which has community members on it. And then we have an internal steering committee, which has students and staff on it. And the primary purpose really of both of those is communication, making sure that we're hearing what's happening, what people are saying in the community, and that they have information to be ambassadors in the community and share when people ask, like, well, what's going on? I heard that the pool's never going to reopen, or like all of it. Sometimes it feels that way. So then this spring we did pre-design we brought 3 architectural firms on board, and we did pre-design. So kind of trying to get a scope, a big scope of like what each of these work packages were going to look like. Tonight, we're going to ask the board to approve a CMGC process, so that we can bring a contractor on board. And then this fall, we'll dig in and really start detailing out and planning with the architects, the contractors, and our stakeholders side by side. So then we'll start probably significant construction next summer, realistically, because some of the programs we won't be able to, we're trying to do a lot of different things at once without disrupting instruction. And then we're also just going back out to those community partners, being mindful of like, we don't want to just show up when we want them to pass a bond. We need to be there, side by side with them all the time. So making sure that work continues that we're staying engaged.
So kind of your intent to keep the oversight committee engaged throughout the
Yes.
construction, all the.
Yes, we're meeting with them quarterly. We've already met twice. Our next meeting is right before Labor Day weekend, which they chose. I don't know. They chose. Yeah, so we're meeting quarterly with them, and then just kind of sharing with our project management team and where we're at, what we're doing. But I think that things will really start picking up once we get that CMGC this fall and we start actually seeing what projects are going and what the scope is and how much everything's going to cost.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
We heard testimony tonight about some reductions in the facilities capability for the college right at the time you're going to be issuing new bonds. Can you just describe, what your thinking is around, because bond proceeds can only pay for the capital improvements that will be part of this, but can you maybe describe some of the thinking about maintaining these facilities as they're being built and going forward?
So yes, we're one of the projects, like just starting off with the bond, we did like a 3D mapping of the entire facility. So, some of that I think will be easier while we're doing the bond. Long term, we're going to have to figure out a solution for some of those, the upkeep stuff that happens. But also one of the things that we're looking at, one of the major ideas with the bond is bringing our nursing program, which is at the Bruning Center. So we have 3 different locations. This is our main campus, and then we have the Maywood Park Center and the Bruning Center. So our nursing program has lived at the Bruning Center since its inception in 2004. And we're going to bring that back to campus and create a health professions center. So kind of some collaboration, some overlap, so students can see what other health professions programs there are, if like they can get into nursing, but updating those labs and really preparing our students to be able to go into the fields, the healthcare fields. But that will free up the Bruning Center, right? So we won't have a program there. We can look at what we do with that. So side note, we have 11 parking spaces at Bruning. It was something that was a little short-sighted when we decided to buy that building. So it's not ideal for a program that has a lot of commuter students. So just looking at like a future there, but the potential there too of looking at, partnering, leasing it to Gresham Barlow, like are there other community partners? But is there a way to like reduce our actual footprint that would help support our facilities and custodial staff so they're not trying to cover as many facilities from a cleaning and maintenance perspective?
We see in the budget the addition of a new full-time faculty position in the funeral service education program. What was the process for identifying this as the place to invest at a time when you're making cuts to other positions?
The decision to add an additional faculty member in the funeral services program was largely driven by changes to accreditation standards that were set by our accrediting body, the American Board of Funeral Service Education. They changed the standard that all programs needed to have 2 full-time faculty members by January of 2027. We worked for about 8 months to see if there was another way that we could meet this standard. We tried to, kind of compile the hours from all of the part-time faculty who work in the program to see if that might add up to a full-time faculty member. Once we realized that the accrediting board was not going to accept any of the options outside of hiring an additional full-time faculty member, we turned to our advisory board and then began trying to look at how we could take what felt like outside pressure and turn it into a benefit, an opportunity for the college. And so, we looked at the state death rates. We had data from 2023, and there were like 45,500 and some deaths in the state of Oregon. We kind of considered, not that it's an even divide, but that's, over 3,000 families in the state of Oregon that need this kind of support. And our advisory group then really looked at what the needs were. And so the impetus for hiring the new faculty member was, an accreditation standard, meeting our accreditation. One of the other things we did consider was eliminating the embalming piece, because the accreditation only applies to the embalming piece. But after conversations with our advisory board, we learned that really funeral directing and embalming really needed to go together, that they were both skills that made our graduates more employable. Anyway, the advisory group identified two strategic priorities. One was since 2021, House Bill 2574 passed that said that we could now have natural organic reduction as an option in burial, that we might want to explore that. And the other piece was kind of an interpersonal communication, and that's mentioned in your question, that they thought that funeral directorship in our program, which is longstanding, could evolve into more multicultural perspectives that focused on interpersonal communication, emotional intelligence, and managing the needs of clients from a variety of cultural backgrounds. So we created the new position and we gave it the title Funeral Services Education and Program Development Coordinator to ensure that new program priorities were the central focus of the new position. The position is advertised now, and we hope to fill it over the summer. And then the other proposal that came from Doug, our current full-time faculty member, and as well as the advisory board, was the idea that instead of creating a traditional on-site program, we could take these two priorities and create two online programs. So we're hoping that in fall of 2028, we'll launch both a natural organic reduction. I'm not sure at this point if it'll be a certificate or a degree. There is quite a bit of interest in short-term certificates, so we will look into that. And because they will both be, and the other one, of course, would be the directorship, multicultural focused, that they are asynchronous online programs for the most part with limited contact time. So they'll be available to all Oregonians, and we hope to have 20 students in each of those initial cohorts, which would more than double the size of the program and more than justify the new faculty member.
How long have you had this program?
20 years. There's probably some faculty in the audience that can answer that better than I can. I know our funeral services education person has been here for quite some time.
I've been here 28 years.
28.
28, yeah.
Wow. So this is a pre-existing program, and you're thinking about adding on a new component with the grief counseling and business management.
Well,
Is that a fair description?
yeah, we're adding actually 2 new approaches to funeral management. One would be for the funeral director side, which is expanding interpersonal skills. Our advisory group tells us that these are skills that are, needed throughout the industry. Emotional intelligence, apparently, I mean, these are traumatic events, and we'd like to prepare people as best as we can to support families. But the other piece is actually partnered with embalming. So currently we only teach embalming, and we would like to expand into some of the more modern concepts around disposal of bodies. And so natural organic reduction is the overarching concept, and it includes apparently many different ways that, everything from turning people into compost. There's some chemical reduction. This is not my field, but I do support expanding the conceptual framework in the program.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for bringing up the baccalaureate program in cybersecurity. We wanted to ask a little bit more about that program since you have your first graduates matriculating this spring. If you could give us an update on the program performance, student retention, and has it lived up to its promise as a high yield model for the college?
Yes, and
sorry.
I'll do this quickly because I realize we're at time. So we started out with 28 full and part-time students in 2024. Fall of 2025, we had an additional, actually, I think it's fall of 2025 and then 2024, 2025. I'm sorry, my notes. So we had an additional 22 students enroll the following year. The completion rate has been high, we think 77%. And then we had 16 graduates this year, which would be of both the full and part-time, 57% of that initial starting class. So we still have some part-time students working their way through. It is a very popular program. There's curriculum revision going on now that we've had a full cycle. The faculty are looking at adding prerequisites so that at the 300 level, the students are better prepared. And there's also some conversation about how we deliver the program. Initially, we promised that we would deliver it in all modalities all at once. And that approach isn't exactly what we're going to continue with, but we do want to offer as many options in terms of online, face-to-face as we can. And we just recently, like within weeks, hired our second full-time faculty member. That faculty member also comes from industry, and so we are staying true to our hands-on approach and our connections with industry. And then recently we were ranked number 8 by programs.com in the nation. And their comments about our program were that we stand out for delivering exceptional educational quality while providing outstanding return on investment. And we agree with that.
Thank you. We had the one. Do you want to?
All right, that was our last question. Thank you so much to the district for your thoughtful answers and engagement in a hard budget year for sure. So now I will gavel close the hearing and open up a regular business hearing of the TSCC. Commissioners, any other comments on the budget? Executive Director Wilhite, will you review the recommendations for our certification letter, please?
Yes. First, a thank you to the MHCC finance staff for their partnership throughout the budget process. We really appreciate you checking in on budget law compliance. It can be highly technical, and we so appreciate a phone call to just talk it through whenever something comes up. We as staff found the budget estimates and process to be in compliance with budget law. For the fiscal year 26-27 approved budget process, we have no objections or recommendations.
May I have a motion authorizing commission to sign the certification letter as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously authorized. Thank you so much. Meeting closed.